there right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Today is Monday, February 26, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Descendants of formerly enslaved people at Saint Louis University, they want the university to pony up to the tune of billions of dollars as reparations for their ancestors building that university. We'll talk to folks involved in this case. Also, a nonprofit housing watchdog group has filed suit against several Massachusetts property companies and real estate brokers for discriminating against low-income housing tenants. Donald Trump actually stood in front of a group of black conservatives in South Carolina and said, "Black people love me because I have mugshots and I'm being indicted." Right. And Florida Congressman Byron Donalds actually defends Trump's racist comments. We'll show you what he said. Also, longtime Flint, Michigan advocate and council member Eric Mays has passed away at the age of 65. And the 6th annual Urban One Honors aired last night, celebrating the 20th anniversary of TV One. I was involved in that as well, so we'll show you some of what took place. And Bob Costas, whoa, he does not hold back for what he had to say about Donald Trump and toxic MAGA cult. We'll show you that as well. It's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
$74 billion. That is what 200 black descendants of folks who built Saint Louis University in Missouri say they are owed for their ancestors' work. The descendants of the Saint Louis University Enslaved trace their lineage to 19th century slave Henrietta Mills and Charles Chauvin. They say the university owes them compensation for 42 years of unpaid labor. Journey from L.A. is the lead attorney for the Descendants of the Enslaved of Saint Louis University, Avrea Martin. Dr. Julianne Malveaux is on our panel. She's also involved in this case as well. Glad to have both of you here. Plus, also in our panel, Dr. Amakongo Dabinga, Senior Professorial Lecturer, School of International Service, American University out of D.C., Renita Shannon, former Georgia State Representative out of Atlanta. Reva, I want to start with you. When did this process start with the Descendants, and how did it begin to build?
Roland, for lifting this story up. The Catholic Church and the Jesuits decided that they were tired of the narrative that had been put forth that somehow Jesuits were, quote unquote, good slave owners. And so they started their own reconciliation and history and remembrance process, started close to a decade ago, where they actually went and investigated what the history and the relationship of Jesuits were with enslaved people. And what they found was pretty horrific. It was horrible, in fact. Discovered that enslaved people were responsible for the building of most of the 27, if not all, of the 27 Jesuit universities around this country. You may have remembered a couple of years ago, Georgetown made national headlines with its revelation, and that 272 slaves, they called them the GU 272, were actually sold in order to avert a financial crisis for that university. And so my clients in St. Louis, Missouri, were notified between 2016 and 2019 or so, that they were the direct descendants of African-American men and women who had been brought from Maryland into St. Louis to help build St. Louis University. And what we did with the help of Dr. Malveaux, Roland, was do for the first time ever, which was to do an evaluation of what the value of the enslaved labor would have been for those men and women. Because many Jesuit universities have come forward. They have written reports about their investigation. They've come clean about how they treated enslaved people, which again was pretty horrifically, but none had actually done that economic valuation to tell the descendants what the value of their ancestors' labor was. So at a press conference held in St. Louis on the university's campus, Dr. Domingo was actually there, Dr. Malveaux, working with another renowned professor out of UConn, Dr. Thomas Kramer. We did that. We calculated that amount. And, I want to set the record straight. We're not asking St. Louis University to disgorge $74 billion of stolen enslaved labor, but what we are asking it to do is to take into consideration what that financial evaluation or valuation is when they think about what reconciliation should look like, because oftentimes they're having these conversations without having those numbers. Well, for all practical purposes, we are not aware of any of these conversations at Jesuit universities, including Georgetown, where that information has been publicly made available to the descendants. And we wanted to do that because we thought it important to give the conversation more heft and for the university to be able to make a real, true commitment to the reconciliation process.
You are an economist, and you were involved in this calculation. So walk us through that. How did you arrive at these numbers?
Well, we start by looking at what prevailing wages were beginning in 1847 when the first enslaved people came to St. Louis. And Roland, we use the lowest numbers possible. So we're talking about people getting paid 5 cents an hour in 1847. Now, we know that enslavement was a 24/7 proposition, so it's not like people had time off. But in any case, we calculated that, and then we came up with a number, and then we basically did an interest rate calculation. If we use a low interest rate of 3%, we end up with a lower number. If we end up with a modest interest rate, still modest, of 6%, we end up with a $74 billion number. So basically, looking at the value of people's wages, the prevailing wage at that time, not counting, Roland, and it's really important to know, not counting the skilled craft people and others. We just took the basic lowest wage. And Dr. Kramer really did establishing what those low wages basically did with the wrongful death or anything else. You basically take the number and you add the interest rate. And so that's how we came up with the number. And it's really important contextually to do that because St. Louis University is a very wealthy university. They've got a very large endowment. They came up with their report and then they did nothing. I mean, that's what makes it so egregious. They came up with a report. They acknowledged their involvement in enslavement. As Avrea said, some of the reading that we've done is horrific. One man writes about how he was forced to sleep in an outhouse with no heat and said, if I don't die from pneumonia, I'll die from something else. But these people were not treated well. And it's disappointing to me at some level. I'm a graduate of a Jesuit university, Boston College, and I don't know that BC had anything to do with enslavement, but all the Jesuits are hooked up. But the Jesuits always put themselves out there as the most intellectual, the most caring of the Catholics. And this does not seem either intellectual nor caring.
Avrea, to Julianne's point, St. Louis University, their endowment is $1.5 billion. And to me, the reason I think this is different than your typical, when you see these discussions with regards to reparations, is that you're able to very clearly establish how it was built and the labor that it was built with. And so therefore, they are thriving today as a result of that free labor. And so when you're talking to them, what other comparisons are you using to show as a standard example of how reparations have been paid out for similar cases?
There are some examples, Roland, of some other universities and colleges that have gone through this reconciliation and healing process, and we were able to show them a theological university that actually has gone through this process and made restitution, cash payments, a part of its healing work. What we saw with respect to Georgetown entered into an agreement with some of the descendant families that they were able to identify for a scholarship, and then if you've been following this in the news, there were descendant families who said they weren't a part of that process, who feel like that scholarship, that was the money set aside for scholarships, didn't really honor the descendants, because many folks, quite frankly, don't want to go to Georgetown to college, and that there are descendants who have interests beyond just receiving a college scholarship. So one thing that's really interesting, and Dr. Domingo was there, we did the press conference, Roland, we revealed for the first time this valuation, and then we did a teach-in, because there are so many people, including African Americans in this country, that don't know this history, even folks right there in St. Louis, Missouri, that don't know the history of St. Louis University's involvement with slavery, and also who don't believe that African Americans are entitled to any kind of cash reparations or restitution. So we are not only communicating with and engaging with the university, we're also raising awareness about this issue.
Omakongo, you were there. Speak to your presence there.
Well, it was really powerful. And one of the things that I loved about it is that with the incredible work that Avrea is doing, so many people talk about reparations on a national level, but what we're seeing is we're starting to have victories in terms of awareness and actual consequences financially happen on local levels. And so to be there, it was the most powerful part for me was when Avrea was on stage with Dr. Malveaux and descendants of the enslaved individuals as well, who are front and center talking about the experience and the situation and their pain. So many of them who live in the area don't have access to the university. So many come from communities, that are underprivileged and marginalized. And so they were there on that campus. And it was a community event. It wasn't only, those of us who are scholars or lawyers. It was a community event. There were regular people from the community. There were people from the church. There were people from the news who were there. All who were there demanding justice for our people, for something that, as Dr. Malveaux said, people write little reports, but don't really do any of the follow-up. And also, as a graduate of Georgetown University myself, it was really important that I be there to witness it as well. And so to be there, be part of the teaching, and lastly, to see the young people who were there. the young people, I'm talking middle school kids, elementary school kids who were there for much of the event, to make sure that these stories are carried on to them so these stories don't just die with us. This is a movement that is not going to stop. And I credit Avrea and D-Slew and everybody who was there for what they're doing, because we deserve to have our stories be told and recognized. And that was the best part of the event for me.
I want to bring in Renita here, and I'm going to bounce this off of Avrea and Julianne as well. So this was just a couple of weeks ago, if you will, Renita, where the governor of New York State made this announcement that New York State Department of Financial Services Holocaust Claims Processing Office, they assist Holocaust victims and their heirs recover stolen assets, and they helped secure and return over $183 million in compensation to victims and their heirs for bank, insurance, and other material losses. They facilitated settlements involving over 250 culture objects since its inception in 1997. So the question I have for you, Renita, is that if this is done in New York State, could this also be a model, if you will, because this was not just Holocaust victims, it said their heirs. And so the role of the state helping individuals recover stolen assets or getting compensation. Your thoughts?
This could be a model with the right political will. So what you mentioned was a great example of where the governor actually moved forward to try to help these victims get restitution. This should be done for Black folks in this country who are descendants of slaves. And so what we're seeing here is that time and money and government resources are being spent in trying to help these victims get restitution. It is purely a lack of political will, and I would say a continuation of anti-Blackness that you don't see a lot of these programs spring up to make a way for Black folks to be paid restitution for slavery that occurred for us. And so this could be a fantastic model. I would say that New York also has, reparations to pay to Black folks. So if I'm living in New York, I'm looking at that like, well, I'm happy for them, but we would love to get this assistance as well with being paid reparations, which, as Amakongo mentioned before, we've only seen at a very, very local level some city councils that have tried to move forward with some reparation packages that have not included actual cash, but have included other resources. And so we've had very, very little movement on this. And it is time for government entities to really step up and assist with getting reparations in whatever way they can. And then last, I just want to applaud the three of you for doing this important work. What you have done here is so amazing. The fact that you saw the report and you asked them what is the next step, because far too often folks are getting invested in the apology to save their reputation, but have no plans for a future step. So I would ask a question, if I may, Roland, just to know, has the university made any commitment that they will pay any sort of reparations now that you have done the calculations for them?
Yeah, in response to that, it's a great question. This process has been going on with the descendant families, like I said, since about 2019. And they actually brought me on, hired me because they felt stuck. They felt like they had gotten to a place with the university where, they get a lot of what I'll call Minnesota nice responses. So the university has a lot of sugary sweet responses. They never say no to anything, but yet they haven't really moved the ball forward. They have this elaborate report, talks about centering the voices of descendants. And back in 2019, they actually did have descendants on their discovery committee that was composed to actually come up with some kind of reconciliation plan. There was a death of the leader of that committee. COVID happened. And to be honest with you, since 2021, COVID's over. They found new leadership for this committee, but the university hasn't done much. So my job as the lead attorney, civil rights attorney, is to push this process forward, to bring together those coalition partners in St. Louis, to bring together those national voices who say that this issue matters, and to try to force the university to live up to the promises, because they've made all the right statements. They've made, tremendous promises to the families, but they've not lived up to those promises.
Roland, one of the most moving things.
Here's what jumps out.
Something else.
Julianne, go ahead.
one of the most moving things for me was to see some of the elders. There were gentlemen there, dapper as they wanted to be, who were, you know, in their 80s and 90s, and recounted some of the hardships that they had experienced during their lifetime, partially as a function of their descendant status. They have, one brother said, you know, I said, what do we take away from this? He said, never give up. Never give up. And I think that that was really powerful when you looked at these folks, elders, who basically understood the history and were committed to righting the wrongs.
Reva, last question for you. Do you believe that the difference between this and what happened at Georgetown compared to broad general reparation claims is that you were able to trace specific descendants to a specific entity? And so what I mean by that is when you hear some people discuss reparations, it's reparations for all descendants.
Right.
As opposed to, in this case, y'all have narrowed this down by saying, no, we're not saying all. Here are the 200, here are the direct descendants of individuals who built this university. Is that what really what makes this also a lot different?
Absolutely, Roland. And I'm involved, as you know, you've had me on the show before talking about Palm Springs, California. And very similar to Palm Springs, California, there is an identifiable group of people. There is an identifiable perpetrator of the harm, and then there is the quantification of the actual harm. So they're very similar in that regard. Georgetown, I think, you know, was one of the first institutions to go forward. And the descendants, I don't know them personally, so I don't want to, you know, make any judgments about the decision-making process they went through. But ultimately, some of the descendants didn't feel like their voices were centered or that the resolution that was reached, i.e. these scholarships, really honored them. So I think there's a lot of learnings from Georgetown, but we've also moved this process forward. And there is, Roland, in the zeitgeist, I would say, this trepidation, this fear to talk about cash payments when it comes to Black folks, whether we're talking about reparations or these narrow restitution actions. And I think all of us that work in this area have got to get comfortable saying cash payments are completely acceptable, should be on the table. And with every other group, as you just read out from what's happening in New York, there isn't that same level of hesitancy when it comes to cash payments. So I do think there's some lessons to be learned from Georgetown. And I know my clients are interested in kind of a range of things that will constitute healing and reconciliation. And cash payment is one of those. And we're not afraid to say that out loud. And we should not, as a people, Black folks, be concerned that somehow that makes us look like we just want a money grab or something. And that's a narrative that's been, again, disseminated and repeated over and over again in mainstream media and even amongst some of us. So I hope, if nothing else, that this whole process helps folks feel comfortable saying we are worthy, just like every other group, to receive a range of things for our healing. And one of them is cash payments.
Right, and I think what makes this different, just like we talk about Tulsa, is that you have direct descendants of individuals who are heirs, and you're able to also make. So when someone says, "Well, this is not fair," you can go, "I'm sorry. Here are other examples of other groups that are being assisted because they were direct descendants and heirs," and so that's why that's important. Avrea Martin, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland.
All right, folks, going to a break. We'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs. Endless possibilities for us.
For the last 15 or maybe 16 years, 18 years, I'll say, since when I moved to LA, I hadn't had a break. I hadn't had a vacation, probably a week vacation here or there. Right. This year, after I got finished doing Queen Sugar and we wrapped it out, because I knew I had 2 TV shows coming on at the same time, I said, I'm going to take a little break. So I've been on break for the first time, and I can afford it now. Praise God. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I can afford it. I'm like, I can sit back and ain't got nothing to worry about, man. But this was the first time in almost in 2 decades that I've actually had time to sit back and smell the roses.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, the amazing Drew Dixon.
She gives us the details behind the HBO documentary that shed light on the alleged sexual assaults by Russell Simmons.
And we're talking about the Netflix documentary, Ladies First, right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
This is Reggie Rock-Byfield. You're watching
Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
A lawsuit has been filed against several Boston area landlords and real estate brokers for discrimination. The Housing Rights Initiative say they investigated these folks with using testers and found landlords and brokers refused to rent to tenants with government-subsidized housing vouchers. That's against the law. Joining us from New York is the founder and executive director of Housing Rights Initiative, Aaron Carr. Aaron, glad to have you on the show. I did a podcast with Patrick Bet-David. Called himself an independent. He's a conservative. And he tried to tell me that, systemic racism in housing doesn't exist. I then talked about census tracts and I talked about appraisers. Then he tried to poo-pah it. I don't believe it. And tried to suggest that what y'all went through doesn't exist. And I kept trying to explain to him it's real. I remember years ago watching 2020, I think, and I think it was out of Boston where they took same individuals, same resume, but one black, one white, and the black folks were turned away even though all the data was the same. So walk us through how did y'all use your testers? What did you show, and how did you actually get this done?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I mean, one thing to understand about housing discrimination is that it is never an isolated incident. It's usually part of an industry-wide problem. And industry-wide problems require industry-wide solutions. So to combat this issue, our watchdog group conducted a year-long sting operation in Boston where our undercover investigators basically pretended to be tenants with housing vouchers. And our investigators scoured rental listing websites for apartments and then proceeded to contact those brokers and landlords to determine if they were in compliance with the laws. And basically on these recorded exchanges, which were largely done by text message, our investigators would ask questions that you'd expect any actual tenant to ask, right? How much are utilities? What's included in the rent? And then towards the end of every conversation, our investigators would pop the $1 million question. Do you accept housing vouchers? And in many cases, the real estate company said no. So to put it, in summary, these landlords, these brokers, this real estate industry factually and undeniably broke the law, and they broke it with reckless abandon.
And these housing vouchers, this is from the federal government. It doesn't indicate that, oh my God, these are awful people with criminal backgrounds. But based upon, I've spent years covering housing in my career, and that is the automatic assumption that people make if you have a federal housing voucher.
That's right. Many landlords stigmatize people with rental assistance, right? As you just said, as bad, defective, and unworthy. But my question is, how is a family with children unworthy? How is a disabled veteran who risked their life for our country unworthy? How is a senior citizen who wants to live independently unworthy? How is a woman escaping domestic violence unworthy, right? These are the faces of voucher holders. And the notion that voucher holders are unworthy is just something that is manifested itself time and time again during the course of our investigation. And the most important thing to know about that is that there is little merit to it. There are two states, Oregon and Washington, that provide something called a damage mitigation fund for landlords who participate in the voucher program. And this is basically where the government will compensate landlords if voucher holders damage their properties. And guess what? Landlords have only used these funds a handful of times in both states over the past 5+ years, proving that these concerns are non-existent and they're completely overblown.
And of course, what this does is it contributes to the housing crisis because you're not providing opportunities for these people who are looking for a place to live.
That's right. I mean, brokers and landlords are the gatekeepers of housing, and they get to decide where families live, where people work, and where children get to go to school. And that's the thing about housing discrimination. It goes beyond the walls of housing and literally touches upon everything. And you mentioned before that your conservative friend basically said, you know, this is not a big deal. It doesn't exist. And what I want the American public to understand is that housing discrimination is not just an attack on tenants. It's actually an attack on taxpayers, because homelessness is both morally reprehensible and, as conservatives might put it, it's fiscally irresponsible. Because when families are unable to use their vouchers due to housing discrimination, what happens? They become homeless, right? And homelessness increases homeless shelter costs. It increases healthcare costs. It increases court costs, unemployment costs, right? All costs across the board. So housing discrimination doesn't just impose a cost on tenants, it imposes a cost on our society. And if we as a society don't do more to solve homelessness, then we as a society will continue to pay the cost of not solving homelessness, which is bad for everyone. So what I want the public to understand is that we all have a stake in this. Whether you are a tenant, whether you are a taxpayer, this is a community affair.
Questions from the panel. Omokongo, you first.
Well, first of all, as a Boston native, I really want to thank you for exposing this. And having lived there for so long and seeing the consequences of housing policy up front, it's been so problematic for so long. And you're also based in New York. And so given the work that you do, how are you seeing this manifested on a nationwide level? And is it getting worse?
So we are doing this work in California. We're doing this work in Boston. We're doing this work in New York City and a couple of other places. And I would say that the areas where it is most prominent are the areas that lack housing and affordable housing. So I think supply shortages, affordable housing shortages, that is where we are seeing the highest levels of discrimination, which makes total sense because when landlords aren't desperate for tenants, they tend to get very choosy and very discriminatory. So there's two things we need to do here. One, we need to proactively and enforce our fair housing laws unapologetically and systematically, and we also need more affordable housing.
Renita?
Well, thanks for the work that you're doing. I firmly believe that this is a nationwide problem. Here in the Atlanta metro area, we see similar results in that people wait years to get a housing voucher. And then when they do, it really doesn't make a difference because there's really not a lot of housing available for them to rent. There's not a lot to rent in general, but on top of it, there's so much discrimination from landlords who feel like the renters are going to damage their property, when in reality, it doesn't really make sense what they're saying because choosing to rent to someone who has a Section 8 voucher, the government is agreeing to pay either part or all of their rent. So you're actually a little more guaranteed that you're going to get paid as a landlord versus someone who does not have a voucher. And, you're just sort of rolling the dice that they will actually be able to pay. My question for you is, the program that you mentioned where some states have moved forward with creating a fund in case any property is damaged to sort of entice landlords to not move forward with stereotypes, how widespread is that program? Or how many states have something like that in existence?
Yeah, I'm only familiar with the one in Washington State and Oregon. I'm not sure if there are any others. But I think I view it as almost like a study because the fact that they put these programs in place and landlords hardly, have used them really speaks to how wrongly stigmatized voucher holders are. And I think, that's just a very important revelation that I think we need to climb to the top of the tallest building and scream, right, at all these landlords and brokers. But, in states like Massachusetts, New York, and a number of others, it's unequivocally illegal to discriminate against tenants with housing vouchers. So if a landlord or a broker doesn't want to follow the law in states that have made that illegal, they're more than welcome to pack up their belongings and move to states which don't have those laws and where they can make considerably less money.
Julianne?
I want to put, first of all, thank you for your work. It's really important. People do, as Renita said, wait a long time to get, they sit on a list, they finally get a voucher. Then when they get a voucher, they can't necessarily find housing. Part of the challenge has been what's happening in the national housing market, where lots of private homes are being bought up by conglomerates that are using them for income generation. So these are private homes that could have been rental property, but now they're owned by some conglomeration. And we see a lot of that. We see that also with apartment buildings. We see the private sector, people taking what could have been an apartment building and turning it into an Airbnb. So there's a lot of scarcity in the housing market, especially in the cities that you mentioned, in the New Yorks and the Bostons and these other places. So let's move away a bit from the work you're doing to talk about the housing market in general. What has to happen to make more housing affordable and accessible to people who have a voucher but can't use it? How can we make more affordable housing available to more people who clearly, if they waited on a list for years, need and deserve that subsidized housing?
I think the first thing is there was a study by the Department of Housing and Urban Development that basically found that in landlords and communities with tight housing markets, as I mentioned before, were significantly more likely to discriminate against voucher holders. And the success rates of voucher holders in very tight markets was only 61%, and in looser markets was 80%. So there's a lot of exclusionary zoning, right, that's happening in areas like New York City and Boston that are intended to reduce housing supply. Beyond just regular housing supply, we also need the federal government and states and localities to spend more money on deeply affordable housing, right? And especially even housing perhaps that's owned by nonprofit landlords who may be more mission-driven, maybe more willing to rent to voucher holders. And then outside of supply, right, in states that have these prohibitions on discrimination, we really need governments to step up to the plate and enforce the law. I mean, I love my nonprofit. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing, but I don't want governments to over-rely on us. I want them to be proactively and systematically enforcing our laws. Because as impressive as I think, this investigation in Boston was, whatever we can do, the government could do 1,000 times better if it had the resources and political will to get the job done. So at the end of the day, we need more housing, we need more affordable housing, and we need to build back government capacity, because that's really how we're going to reduce homelessness in some of the tightest markets in the country.
All right, Aaron, well, we certainly appreciate it. Good luck with the lawsuit. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks, going to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about the racist comments Donald Trump made on Friday targeting African Americans. Oh, yeah, he lost his damn mind. And sportscaster Bob Costas rips Trump. I saw no lies told about MAGA. So we'll have that next, folks. Be sure to support us in what we do. Join the Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to be able to broadcast not only this show every day, but all the shows on the Black Star Network. We do the work that nobody else is doing. Send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
You heard why we're marching, and it's really a launch. It's not even a march. We're launching
That's right.
a 42-week campaign. March the 2nd at 10 o'clock in Raleigh and 33 other state capitals and the District of Columbia. This is a historic move to mobilize the most powerful untapped block of voters in this country.
That's right.
Poor and low wealth voters, who make up 87 million votes. And it's never been tried before. Never been tried before in history. At the same time, the same message same focus. And when that power turns loose, they will not be able to figure out the political calculus. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to shake things up. I'm ready to get up out of the valley. I'm ready for God to put his spirit on us. I'm ready to be used to change this nation. And what we're saying is, can't we come together? Can't we come together around an agenda? You ain't got to like everything about Rembaba. You don't have to like everything about Sangria. You don't have to like everything about Long Choir. But can we come together and say, it's time to end poverty as the fourth leading cause of death? It's time to have $15 and a living wage indexed with inflation. So every time inflation goes up, the minimum wage goes up. It's time to have health care for all. It's time to fully fund public education. Can't we come together? It's time to protect women's right to women's health. It's time to have affordable housing for everybody. It's time to stop the proliferation of guns. Ain't no way folk ought to be able to have more guns than they have food, more guns than they have meat on their table. That makes no sense. Isn't it time for division to be ended and love to take over? Can't we organize around that? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't need to like everything about you, but can't we organize for power? Can't we stand for justice? Can't we love everybody for just a little while? Can't we come up out of the valley? Can these bones live?
What's up, y'all? This is Wendell Haskins, a.k.a. Win Hogan at the original T-Golf Classic. And you know I watch Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Oh, Lord. Now, we used to dealing with this old stupid fool, Donald Trump, but more stupidity from this man. He stood in front of a room full of black conservatives. Well, you look at the pictures, most of the folks in the room were white. And compared his legal issues to the injustices that African Americans face in the legal system. Yeah, he actually said that. Go ahead and press play.
These lights are so bright in my eyes that I can't see too many people out there. But I can only see the black ones. I can't see any white ones, you see? That's how far I've come. That's how far I've come. That's a long way, isn't it? These lights. We've come a long way together. And then I got indicted a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. And a lot of people said that that's why the black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against. And they actually viewed me as I'm being discriminated against. It's been pretty amazing. But would you rather have the black president or the white president who got $1.7 billion off the price? I think they want the white guy right now.
Okay. Well, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds actually went on national television and defended those racist comments.
Sounds like Donald Trump was implying that he can win black voters because they get indicted all the time, too. Is that what he was saying?
Well, I think it's in part of that. It's part of it, Kristen. Look, it was a great night Friday night in Columbia, South Carolina. The president was really just enjoying himself. It was a great celebration for black conservatives across our country. But let's be very clear. Our economy is a mess. Our border is completely unsecured. These things are causes of major concerns for black voters, like it is for every voter in our country. But then when you layer on the fact that, yes, this is political persecution from the Department of Justice and from radical DAs throughout our country, this is something similar that black people had to deal with the justice system themselves. And so their look of it is real simple. Well, dang, if the government's going after him with foolishness, he can't be that bad, especially considering the fact that Joe Biden is terrible at his job.
Well, Congressman, let's just be clear. All 4 indictments against former President Trump were brought by grand juries. There is no evidence that the indictments are political in nature. But let me stick to the question here. Let me get you to respond to Biden campaign co-chair and former Congressman Cedric Richmond, who said this about his comments. Donald Trump claiming that black Americans will support him because of his criminal charges is insulting. It's moronic, and it's just plain racist. How do you respond to that charge, that it's just plain racist?
What I would say is that Cedric is trying to play politics and use racial politics even now as we get into the general election. That's one. Number two, like I said at the top, the number one reason why minority voters in our country want to support Donald Trump is because he did the job of president. He did a great job as president. Our country was secure. The economy was great. These are all things that Donald Trump talked about Friday night. He also did talk about the indictments. What Americans don't want to see, especially black Americans and anybody else, they don't want to see a politicized Justice Department. They don't want to see a two-tier system of justice. They want justice to be followed. They want Lady Justice to be blind. That's what the American people want. That's what black voters want. That's what everybody wants.
Okay. So let me sort of unpack this right here. Donald Trump don't give a damn about black people. Donald Trump don't love black people. Donald Trump don't like black people. If I got to remind y'all that Donald Trump's great-grandfather was a pimp, his daddy attended a KKK rally, got arrested there. Don't forget that Donald Trump himself started his housing career with his daddy, discriminating against black people. They would write a C at the top of the application. So let's just be real, okay? He called African nations shithole countries. Does not care about us at all. And he thinks a few rappers saying good things about him means that he cares. Also recall 2016, he thanked black people for not voting. So what you have to understand, what is at play here, is that this is voter suppression. What Donald Trump wants to do is to make sure that black folks don't turn out. They're touting these numbers. They're touting how well he's done. They're touting who he could get 18, 20%. One of them black conservative fools stood up there at their rally and actually said that, oh, Donald Trump is going to get 50% of all black males. And you got these people posting videos and they're saying, oh, how things were wonderful. You hear all that also from Byron Donald. And they're talking about, oh, man, how we were all getting paid. But if you're out there suggesting that black folks were getting paid well under Donald Trump, let me remind you that those checks were passed by a Democratic House. Yep. That's how that happened. You cannot remotely compare the increase in black-owned businesses under Trump to Biden. Can't do it. The economy today is better than it was under Trump. Now, also remember, Donald Trump was handed a great economy by President Barack Obama. He handed President Biden an awful economy. If you're black out there, don't forget all the black people who died because of COVID, because this fool was talking about injecting bleach into our systems. Let's not forget any of that stuff. So we need to understand what is really at play here. And I said to you, we're going to dedicate an entire show to Project 2025. And we need to understand what's at play there. The wholesale targeting of African Americans. Now, you got people out here who just throw up silly stuff. Some fool named Hurd said the whole economy is trash. That's a lie. It's a lie. Today, the Biden-Harris administration announced they're opposing the merger of Albertsons and Kroger because they believe that is going to contribute to more price increases of food. They've been fighting these type of mergers. There's no doubt the economy today is better than it was when Trump was president. But I got to remind people, we still are 3 years and still trying to recover from COVID. A 100-year pandemic. So it's not like all of a sudden things are going to be great immediately. You literally have to rebuild this economy. And we've seen that. Oh, I got somebody sitting here going, oh, who is this idiot? Oh, the economy is terrible. Inflation is real. Stop gaslighting. We know inflation is real. Because you still got corporations jacking up prices. You've got corporations that are shrinking packages and goods, but increasing the price. No president controls that. And so what we need to understand is, if we're evaluating Trump and the Republican Party, you have to be asking yourself, what actually is their agenda for black people? And what are they going to roll out? That trash platinum plan, which we know is a fraud. But the thing here, Renita, is that there are people being played who don't realize they're being played. And what they better understand is, if that fool and his minions get back in, and let me remind everybody, all y'all people who are talking about Trump 2024, Stephen Miller, Trump's top aide, blocked the money to the black farmers. Y'all need to understand what these people have done to stop black advancement. Senator Tim Scott out there lying about Trump and HBCU funding. I sent him a text on Friday. He still hasn't responded because he know he's lying. And so folk bet not get played, because a year from now they're going to look up and go, why didn't someone tell us? Rita, we did.
Well, when you say that Donald Trump doesn't like black people, I would take it a step further. He, in my opinion, literally does not care if black people cease to exist in this country. And his comments about him being indicted is going to make him better relate to black folks. You know, he got one thing right when he said that black people are being over-indicted in our current criminal legal system. But he's not going to do anything to affect that, whether he wins or loses an election. And so his comments between this and the sneaker release last week just really continue to make the point that he does not understand black voters. voters. I say that because, number one, Black people take voting very, very seriously. And we do not make decisions about voting based off of sneakers and mugshots. That is not how the Black community works. In fact, the largest fight that we are having within the Black community has been people deciding whether or not they're going to vote. All of that is based off of people taking voting very seriously and understanding the power of voting. Donald Trump saying that Black folks will want to see him, get out of this and not be held accountable and that will make them more relatable to Black voters is absolutely garbage. What Black people want to see is that finally in this system that almost never holds white rich men like himself accountable, that he actually will be held accountable. That is what Black people want to see. And then last but not least, for Byron Donalds, I bet that he had to practice his little speech that he gave to the news reporter several times in the mirror, because for him to say with a straight face that the economy was better under Trump is absolute garbage. Here in Georgia, our unemployment fund, our system crashed several times, was nearly broken. We had issues with, being able to pay folks because of the amount of unemployment that was requested all at once under COVID. And Trump did nothing to try to shore up states and helping them with paying for unemployment. He did nothing to try to support Americans at a time when we had a unprecedented pandemic. And so, I'm not a person who believes that the president, I think that the public thinks that presidents have far more control over the economy than they actually do. But in no universe, when you compare the Trump economy and the Biden economy, even with inflation prices, can you say with a straight face that the Trump economy was better? So I think that, what Byron is saying will fool some people who won't do their research, but they should know that he is just bold-faced lying. And I think he probably had to practice those bold-faced lies a lot in order to get that out with a straight face.
And, Julianne, the thing that people need to understand is that when you're talking about the economy and when you're talking about what needs to be done, like you got idiots like Sean Dupree, right? He goes, Roland hates the fact that Black men are abandoning the Democratic Party. Well, Sean Dupree, Republicans are abandoning the Affordable Care Act. Black health care, in terms of those uninsured, is at its lowest ever due to the Affordable Care Act. Guess who wants to get rid of that? Trump and the Republicans. We would be stupid, Julianne, to vote for that fool and these MAGA cult folks and put them back in office.
Well, Renita said there's something that's very essential. Do your research. The fact is that what the Orange Man has done is that he's worked on the most racist tropes there are. Black people like me because I've been indicted. Give me a you-know-what break. That's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's insulting. These golden sneakers or whatever he has, Black people like, according to him, these sneakers. Again, absurd, insulting. But people have to do their research. There have been a spate of stories in the past month or so, really starting in late November, talking about Black men abandoning the Democratic Party. I haven't seen any hard surveys, but you keep hearing these stories. Brothers are abandoning. And I will tell you, my male sibling, who I fight with all the time, he voted for Trump in 16. He did not vote for him in 20. And I said to him, he has 4 sisters. I'm like, fool, why would you vote for that man? Here's what his answers were. Number one, he likes the fact that the Orange Man is the entrepreneur. Number 2, he likes his machismo, which I think is just disgusting. And number 3, he has issues with immigration. And he feels that Trump will have a harder line on immigration. He's in construction, and he can tell you stories about how immigrants come in and they low bid, in construction jobs.
First of all, your brother also got to understand Trump used illegal immigrant labor at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster.
Exactly. No, we have had it's 20.
He don't hate illegal immigrants when he can use them. And damn it, he married one.
No. There you go. But the fact is that the spate of stories keeps coming out, and what I'm learning or noticing like with my brother and some of his friends, is they see the stories and they feel, well, see, other brothers are leaving too. So the issue is, as again, I just go back to what Renita said and talking to some people today, do your research. Get for real. This economy is better than it ever was under the Orange Man. It really, we have a very solid economy. Inflation is our biggest challenge, but it's coming down. The unemployment rate has been below 4% for almost a year. The 2-to-1 black to white unemployment ratio, that has broken. So right now, the black unemployment rate is like the white unemployment rate is, overall employment is 5.7, 3.7, ours is 5.7. So that's the 2-to-1 has broken. So that was almost, you could count on it. So we have a better economy than we've ever had. And then, as everyone has said, the HBCUs have benefited. So many have benefited, and I think, as somebody said earlier, people have a mistaken impression of what a president can do. President Biden tried to do student debt forgiveness, and the courts would not allow him to do it in an overarching way, so now he's done it in a piecemeal way. The Biden-Harris administration is committed, frankly, to black success. Now, are they perfect? Oh, hell no. Could they do more? Yes, but they also have to deal with political realities. So I find it totally frustrating, number one, that like that person that Christian Walker was talking to on Meet the Press, I mean, it's not only did he drink the Kool-Aid, but he spiked it. But we basically are looking at people who will do anything. Tim Scott somebody needs to have a paper bag party with him. Just take him outside and I don't understand how he continues to tell the lies that he tells. But we know he's basically baldly so ambitious that he will get engaged, baselessly. Let me stop. Simply, folks, do your research. If you do your research, you will understand that the Biden-Harris administration have done a good job. Could they do a better job? Yes. Could they, given certain political realities? We're about to shut down again, Roland. That little Mike Johnson from Louisiana refuses to put legislation in front of people. We're about to go back into a government shutdown unless somebody pulls a rabbit out of the hat. That's not Biden-Harris. That's Republicans.
Before I go to you, Congo, Bob Costas was on CNN over the weekend, and boy, did he nail it.
You come at this from a position of not wanting to see Trump get elected. You should state that at the outset. True?
Yes, absolutely. He is by far the most disgraceful figure in modern presidential history. He's only become more disgraceful since 2016 and since 2020. He is a bubbling cauldron of loathsome traits, and it's only those who are actually suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, which is the way they and Fox News and all the rest of MAGA media try to brush aside all the legitimate criticisms of Trump. You have to be in the throes of some sort of toxic delusion, in a toxic cult, to believe that Donald Trump has ever been, in any sense, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, or ethically fit to be president of the United States. But his supporters are locked in on that. There is no cult of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Well, Congo, he summed it up.
Pretty much. I mean, hashtag ether, right? I love it. I mean, look, when it comes down to it, we've been talking a lot about the Trump versus Biden economy. It's also, I just want to add one thing to that Biden's economy was better under Trump's before COVID. A lot of Republicans like to add, well, COVID happened. No, before COVID happened, Biden still has a better economy than Trump comparatively, even given what he inherited from Trump versus what Trump inherited from Obama. When it comes to that speech in South Carolina, one of the things we have to be mindful of is that those comments that he's making about the indictments and all of these other things, there's just two things I want to say. If we are so anti-courts and all of this other type of stuff, why are there 4 black people who are involved in trying to put Trump away? Fonnie Willis, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, and obviously Judge Chutkan is the judge, obviously, so she's not going at him, but she's in charge of that trial as well. And a lot of us seem to be really big fans of them right now. And lastly, when he makes those comments, he's not talking to black people. He is talking to his MAGA base, and he's giving them further permission structure to act on all of their base stereotypes about black people. It's the same thing he did with Mexicans being rapists, the same thing he's giving about ban on Muslims. Every time he says these things, hate crimes and other types of actions spike against that group. So if this man saying it and in front of some black people like that, it gives them a deeper permission structure to be able to go on Fox News or go into their job the next day and say the most despicable things as well. And so we have to be mindful of, even though Trump was around black people in that space, his audience is not us. And that's another big part of the problem that we have to be mindful of as he continues to grab these microphones and spit this ignorance. And I'm so glad that he's been challenged at many different levels in terms of media responses. And lastly, when people are talking about this thing with the black male vote, I'm sick of people bringing up these celebrities and other names as opposed to people like you, Roland Martin, and other people who can speak knowledgeably to the black male experience with voting. They got to stop infantilizing us as if every election is the first time black men are deciding to vote. We know what we're doing, and that's why the numbers for Trump and the Republicans in general have been so low, and I'm expecting the same thing this time around.
All right, folks, hold tight. 1 second, going to a break. We come back. The Party of Family Values in Missouri, they literally have made it clear, if you are a pregnant woman, you can't get a divorce, even if you're getting beaten by your husband. And you notice how all these Republicans are running for cover over in vitro fertilization? How stupid are some of these people who had babies through in vitro who now want to ban it? I told y'all these people ain't pro-life from the womb to the tomb. They are deranged. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs, endless possibilities for us.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
What's good, y'all? This is Doug E. Fresh, and you're watching my brother Roland Martin Unfiltered as we go a little something like this. Hit it. It's real.
Okay, got Black and Missing, folks. right, Siobhan Oji has been missing from her Denver, Colorado home since February 19th. The 17-year-old is 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighs 120 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Siobhan Ogle is urged to call the Denver, Colorado Police Department at 720-913-2000, 720-913-2000. Folks, this is a crazy story out of Missouri. Okay, Missouri is one of 4 states, y'all, 4 states that does not allow pregnant women to get divorced. I'm going to let that sit in. I'm going to let it sit in. So if you're a pregnant woman in Missouri, and let's say you're in an abusive marriage, well, Missouri judges cannot legally finalize a divorce if a woman is pregnant. A mom-to-be can still file for divorce in Missouri, but the court must wait until after the woman gives birth to finalize child custody and child support. Folks, there are no exceptions, not even if domestic violence is an issue. The other states, Texas, Arizona, and Arkansas. That is absolutely crazy, Julianne.
It's beyond crazy. But again, you have these people who want to control women's bodies. That's what they want to do. And they want to, we're going back to the Handmaid's Tale and something like that. If you want, why do you want to get divorced while you're pregnant? Because a dude was a fool. He put his hands on you. He did something to you. And basically, it's restricting women's right to choose, not only choose in terms of bring a pregnancy to term, but choose in terms of who their partner is. How does the government get involved in this? It's really, Roland, it's beyond absurd. And then to throw child support in as an issue, you go pay child support, whether you're divorced, you go pay child support. So I do not understand why so many male, and let's underline, these are male legislators who are attempting to assert control over women's bodies. And I do not, I'm puzzled by it. As you say, Missouri is not the only state, but this is something we see encroaching between the end of Roe. We literally see women having more control, less control rather, and fewer choices about how they live their lives. It's absurd. And I hope that some of the women in the Missouri state legislature will do what they need to do to reverse this ruling. That's really what has to happen, and that's the blessing of having more and more women of both parties in legislatures, is that they're able to look at some of these issues and say, what fool thought this up? That's all you can say is, what fool thought this up?
Look, here's a perfect example, Omokongo. So the Alabama Supreme Court made its ruling regarding in vitro fertilization. And so Republicans are scurrying, trying to claim that they are in favor of it. Go to my iPad, y'all. So check this out. Here you have a Republican. This is crazy. Michelle Steele, a Republican congresswoman from California, is sponsoring a bill to ban all abortions nationwide and ban IFV nationwide, even though she had a kid through IFV. These people are absolutely demented.
Wow. And, it kind of goes in line of that Jimmy Kimmel skit that came out over, last few days, where they're asking, Trump supporters about their thoughts about Biden, and then they trash him. And then they say, oh, I meant to ask about Trump, because they were asking questions about Trump and shin splits and stuff. And then the people automatically switch their critique to praise when they switch from Biden to Trump. This is what's going on right now. They have no morals, and they all feel like no matter what happens, no matter what these judges do, no matter what Trump does, they have to just fall in line to support these platforms. And this is what is really important that we have to understand. People talk about how could Trump be embraced by these white evangelicals and the like. He's not a moral man. He goes against what they're supposed to be about. And I heard someone say this on another show today. It's not about the morality, it's about the power. And Trump and his ilk are giving these guys access to power so that after that, they can do whatever they want in terms of their moral platitudes and a lot of the nonsense that they're spewing. That judge in Alabama was citing the Bible in his ruling on IVF. And here we are supposed to be in a country that's supposed to, believe in separation of church and state. Mike Johnson doesn't believe in the separation of church and state. Trump will say whatever these white evangelicals want to hear so that he can go along with them as well. This is part of the concern. This is about sending women back to the 1950s and 60s and 70s in order to assert power, period, bottom line. And so this is where the time where we have to all get on the good foot and realize that it's not just about what he would do to black people. It's not just about what he would do to rounding up people who are migrants or Muslims. It's not just about what he will do to the poor. It's about all of this combined with all of the hate and insensitivity that is directed towards women as well. These men are misogynists. They don't care about women. And the example that you gave with that representative shows that many will fall in line in order to feel like they have some semblance of power with the men as well. And if we don't get this together in 2024, that's going to go from 4 states to 25 to 30. Who knows? But now is the time that we're putting everybody on blast. It's really the time to take action now, literally before it's too late.
And listen, Julianne, this is very simple. And I saw a story over the weekend that talked about this here. How these white evangelicals, they've just made it clear, this is about power. It is not about morality. It ain't about none of that stuff. This is about power. And what these people want to do, and listen, everybody who's watching, if y'all think we're joking here, they coming after birth control. They're coming after everything. They have a hardcore conservative view, and they are exercising that power. And if they cannot get it at the federal level, they will use their control over state legislatures to get it done.
You know, Roland, in Marxian terms, this is about control of the means of production. Women are producing labor markets, labor forces, and this is about controlling the means of production. You don't want to pay people, you don't want to feed people, but you want to have people to basically work in your factories, work on your farms, work in production. That's all it is. It's about controlling the means of production. Now, you can hide that nonsense in the Bible if you want to. And again, as Omakongo said, we're supposed to be about the separation of church and state. We are not a theocracy. I mean, so how do we get the Bible woven into conversations about women's rights? Because we all know, even those of us who are Christians, that the Bible implicitly is misogynistic. Implicitly. Now, we have wonderful pastors like Barber and my pastor Bill Lamar and others who basically push the envelope on that. But we know that the Bible in its inception is misogynistic. So when this man spouts the Bible, what he's really saying is, I am man and you are woman and you are less. And white conservative women better wake up, because they enjoy the freedoms that progressive women have fought very hard for. But by throwing their hat in running behind the orange man, what they're doing is they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. And it's just ridiculous.
Look, Renita, this is Speaker Mike Johnson here on Fox News. And I need people to, again, understand, listen to what he's saying. This is the person who is the Speaker of the House, who's controlling that agenda. Listen to this and watch.
He wants a total abortion ban with no exceptions. He supported bans that would not only criminalize abortion, but ban IVF treatments and common forms of birth control, and that you voted against access to contraception. Where are you on these issues? Is that an accurate assessment of where you are? Because that's not in step with the American people.
No, Shannon, look, I'm pro-life. I've said very clearly, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I believe in the sanctity of every single human life. So I come to Congress with deep, personally held conviction.
He wants a total abortion ban with no exceptions. He supported bans that would not only criminalize abortion, but ban IVF and common forms of birth control.
I've got my deep held convictions, and they are what he's talking about. He may not get it in Congress, but they absolutely are imposing this across the country in various states.
And these thoughts, none of this is brand new. There is an entire movement of Black women who have been telling the rest of the world that this is what it would come to. It is called the Reproductive Justice Movement. I'm a part of the Reproductive Justice Movement, and advocates like myself have been saying for decades to white women in particular, but specifically to the rest of the world, that there would come a time that these people would outlaw abortion. We have been telling them, and they thought, oh no, that's so overblown, that won't ever happen. And we said, yes, it will. We told them that they will come for contraception. We told them that they will come for IVF. And we also told them around the Dobbs decision, we have said, as these abortion bans have passed from state to state, we have said this affects things like IVF, because when you are deciding that life begins at the point of an egg being fertilized, well, what does that mean when people have IVF, when they're going through a process of IVF and they have fertilized eggs being frozen, waiting to be used at some later point? That means that you essentially cannot destroy any of those eggs that have been fertilized. And, you know, at the end of the day, these clinics are businesses, and so they are not going to just continue to store things things without any type of financial assistance. And so at the end of the day, you know, this all goes back to what Black folks have been saying for so long to folks who, others, particularly white women who are not listening. And I say white women because since JFK, the Republicans have enjoyed a majority of white women's votes in this country for every single presidential election. And so this is the time for them to wake up. I think that things are going to get very interesting now, because when you see now that no longer are conservatives being scared to just say that they want to come after contraception, they're not scared to say that they want to completely outlaw abortion and outlaw IVF. This is now the time where people cannot just say, oh, we don't believe it, because it is actually happening. And the reason why Black people were telling them that this would happen is because we know from our own history what result you get when people are moving forward and advancing laws and running government in a way that is based on a theology that is embedded in white supremacy, because we know that slavery was justified by religion. Jim Crow was justified by religion. Every single thing bad that has happened to us in this country as Black folks was justified by religion. So we know what this looks like, and we understand how extreme these people are.
In fact, here is Mike Johnson. Here's Mike Johnson, literally blaming mass shootings on no-fault divorces, which they blame women, feminism, and Roe v. Wade. Y'all need to be aware of what these people are saying and doing, y'all. So, folks watching, check this out.
You remember in the late 60s, we invented things like no-fault divorce laws. We invented the sexual revolution. We invented radical feminism. We invented legalized abortion in 1973, where the state, the government, sanctions the killing of the unborn. I mean, we know that we're living in a completely amoral society. And so people say, how can a young person go into their schoolhouse and open fire on their classmates? Because we've taught a whole generation, a couple of generations now of Americans, that there is no right and wrong. You remember in the late 60s, we invented things like no-fault divorce.
Well, that's how they roll it. And people need to understand that's what we're dealing with. And these are the people who are in power. And they're not going to stop. And they're going from Georgia to Florida to North Carolina to South Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, all across the South. That's what they're doing. So folk better wake up. Y'all can dance with that devil, but I ain't dancing with that devil or any devil. Just ain't gonna happen. All right, gotta go to a break. We'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Yo, be sure to support us what we do. If you have not joined our Bring the Funk fan club, your resources are critically important for us to do what we do. So we're asking for 20,000 of our fans on an annual basis to contribute $50 each. At $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. You can see your checking money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And be sure to download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We'll be right back.
You heard why we're marching, and it's really a launch. It's not even a march. We're launching
That's right.
a 42-week campaign. March the 2nd at 10 o'clock in Raleigh and 33 other state capitals and the District of Columbia. This is a historic move to mobilize the most powerful untapped block of voters in this country. That's right. Poor and low wealth voters who make up 87 million votes. And it's never been tried before. Never been tried before in history. At the same time, same message, same focus. And when that power turns loose, they will not be able to figure out the political calculus. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to shake things up. I'm ready to get up out of the valley. I'm ready for God to put his spirit on us. I'm ready to be used to change this nation. And what we're saying is, can't we come together? Can't we come together around an agenda? You ain't got to like everything about Rembarbara. You don't have to like everything about Sangria. You don't have to like everything about Long Choir. But can we come together and say, it's time to end poverty as the fourth leading cause of death? It's time to have $15 and a living wage indexed with inflation. So every time inflation goes up, the minimum wage goes up. It's time to have health care for all. It's time to fully fund public education. Can't we come together? It's time to protect women's right to women's health. It's time to have affordable housing for everybody. It's time to stop the proliferation of guns. Ain't no way folk ought to be able to have more guns than they have food, more guns than they have meat on their table. That makes no sense. Isn't it time for division to be ended and love to take over? Can't we organize around that? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't need to like everything about you, but can't we organize for power? Can't we stand for justice? Can't we love everybody for just a little while? Can't we come up out of the valley? Can these bones live?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Coles.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
Yo, it's your man Deion Cole from Blackish, and you watch
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
All right, folks, some sad news out of Flint, Michigan over the weekend. Outspoken and sometimes controversial Councilman Eric Mays has passed away. Mays was serving his third term on the Flint City Council. He gained nationwide notoriety during the Flint water crisis, often clashing with other city leaders. Reports say Mays died of natural causes after an illness. Eric Mays is now answers to the age of 65. Here's, folks, some of the videos there. He would often go to other council members. Watch this.
Mr. Mays, could I just finish speaking? I don't need
Not
you to
really, Miss Fields, you out of order. I'm warning you. Okay, then if you keep calling me out of order, you can get your butt out. Because you're not going to direct this meeting. You're not going to monopolize everybody. You're out of order. Now say another word. You put your finger up in there. You out of here. You out of here. Go. You won't give me or nobody else the finger sitting at this table. You're out of here. No, I'm calm. You're out of here. I wanted to keep giving people fingers. You're out of here. God bless you. God bless you. It's your fault, Woodson. Now we can get on with some business.
Trust me, there were other videos where they went at it. He was absolutely a character on Congo. Ricky Smiley had him on the show, called him his hero. Man, he used to just go at other council members.
Hey, rest in peace and power. And, sometimes you just got to tell it like it is. And if you give people an inch, they'll take a mile. They sense one form of disrespect, they feel like they can keep going. And so he was no nonsense with that. And to be quite honest, some of the things we've been talking about this whole show with Trump and other things, this idea of how they see us. And when we step up like that, people know that they got to step back. And that's what I appreciate about him and everything that he stood for and his advocacy, particularly with the Flint water crisis. We needed more voices. People were speaking up across the country about it, and he was one of the main leaders locally drawing attention to this. And so I always talk about the importance of being an upstander, not a bystander, and he was that in every way, shape, and form. And so, rest in peace and power to him. And when we lose leaders like this locally or nationally, we just hope that there's other folks who are going to step up right after them and continue on in the legacy, because he's leaving a very strong legacy. Can't fill the shoes, but we can at least try to get close to it as possible.
Over the weekend, of course, Little Miss Flint, she had actually posted a tweet about the news when it came out that he had passed away, stating that he was one of the a few council members who supported her, who had her back as well. And again, a lot of people did not like his style, Renita, but his district, they loved him.
Absolutely. They loved him because he was authentic and because, most importantly, he understood why he was elected and he took that job very seriously. A lot of times when we talk about politics on this show, I have a lot of critiques for Democrats because, I know what is being done and what is not being done. And a lot of the critiques are around people getting elected and then not taking their job of representing people very seriously. This is something that you cannot say about Councilman Mays. I mean, he absolutely took his job seriously day in and day out, and he fought for the people in the way that they elected him. And so the things that he did, as you mentioned, he was somebody who did not make a lot of friends. Sometimes when he said what needed to be said, I can relate to that because I've had those same experiences myself serving for 6 years in the Georgia House. But at the end of the day, you are there for the people. Councilman Mays clearly remembered that and carried that with him every single day that he served, and he absolutely will be missed. Rest in power, Councilman Mays.
I was looking for one video, Julianne. Let me think, I found it. One of the things that was interesting is that, he had amassed like some 200,000 followers on TikTok because of his videos, and he had no problem going, like I said, at other council members. Here's one of them.
Damn. It's a bunch of bull. And I want the whole city to know it. And I'm going to point fingers. Monica Galloway arguing, fussing. And she the main one. He's doing points of orders. He's doing points of information. Mr. President, I want to hear from you.
Point of order.
I stick by it. I call you a handkerchief head Negro. I call him a handkerchief head Negro. And I'm sticking with it. Google it.
I'm going to give you
Mr. Metcalf, take care of this foolishness. Now do it again and you'll be gone.
Please finish.
Don't interrupt me. I'm 59 years old, finna be 60 and grown. You don't care if I'm 100, but I ain't 100. I ain't free. You give me respect. I can holler and speak if I want to.
Councilman Mays, please refrain from your profanity.
Hell yeah. It shouldn't be fine. We got folks sitting in business and I wouldn't care if you was the chair, the sofa, the TV.
Mr. Mays, you are out of order.
You out of order.
All right. Go.
You're talking about everybody. I ain't gonna lower my voice. Quit talking to me. What you telling me to? Tell me to lower. Okay, what if I don't?
Sound like your kind of council member, Julianne.
Hey, I love the brother. First of all, we lose so much in the name of decorum, propriety. Somebody might say he was over the top, but public policy in Flint was over the top. How do you end up with a water system that isn't working where people have to use bottled water? That's over the top. So if he had to throw a few dams in there to make his point, hey, I'm with him. Again, so much of reality is swallowed by decorum. It's like these members of Congress, my esteemed colleague. You're not esteemed. None of y'all are esteemed, but you say that, and it's like trying to make chicken salad out of chicken spit. And I don't mean spit. By sitting there and acting as if everything is okay. This brother had a heart of the people. He did not mind expressing himself. He was not going to be cowed, bullied, or interrupted. And then there it is. I admire him. I had the privilege of meeting him once years ago, not years ago, but within the last 10 years. And we had an interesting conversation. We've cut out the same cloth. You call MF an MF if an MF is an MF. And that's just how it is. Unfortunately, too many of our people have drank the Kool-Aid of propriety. There is nothing proper about starving children. There is nothing proper about not having a working water system. There is nothing proper about paying people sub-minimum wages. So when you hide under propriety, what you're saying is, as long as you talk nice, it's okay. But the powers that be don't act nice. They don't act nice. And we know everything we've talked about on this show, Roland, really speaks to that. We talk about little Mike Johnson talking about his Christian beliefs. Well, what is Christian about starving children? What is Christian about forcing a woman who is pregnant by an abuser to stay in that marriage? What's Christian about that? We don't get me started. But literally, this brother should be a role model for every legislator. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to go into their profanity book. There are a lot of ways to use profanity. I remember calling a white girl on some television show the high priestess of prevarication. She didn't figure out what I said until about a week later, but she said, "Oh, you called me a liar." I said, "Itch, you need to walk with a dictionary." But in any case, you don't have to go into the profanity, but there are a lot of ways you can cut somebody out. Some of them don't have any profanity to do with it. But what you must have is a passion for justice. And so I'm glad that you have the commercials for Reverend Barber and the work that he's doing. He has a passion for justice. And this brother, Councilman Mays, a passion for justice. And that's a passion that I think many of us trade decorum for passion.
Well, he was certainly a unique one, Eric Mays, Flint, Michigan council member, passed away at the age of 65. I'm going to a quick break. We come back. Urban One Honors took place over the weekend. We will share more about that next. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs, endless possibilities for us.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hey, yo, what's up? This is Mr. Dalvin right here. What's up? This is KC. Sitting here representing the Jodeci. That's Jodeci. Right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, last night on TV One, the 6th annual Urban One Honors aired. And that was shot last month in Atlanta. I was there. Last night, I presented the cast of Good Times. In addition to the 6th annual show, it was also recognizing the 20th anniversary of TV One. I was one of the folks who helped build that network. Of course, last night's show honored some of the best and brightest in Black America, including Dionne Warwick, recognized Lifetime Achievement Award honoree, Mary J. Blige, Frankie Beverly, Donald Lawrence, and Chloe Bailey. All of them were, of course, recognized. It was a great affair. And on the red carpet before we started, I had an opportunity to chat with my Houston homegirl, LaToya Luckett.
Well, how does it feel to be here tonight?
Feels great, especially considering I was one of the folks that helped build this network. One of the original.
Light flex.
No, I'm just, just saying.
Facts.
No, it's facts. It's facts. I was telling someone earlier, what people don't understand is that when we were starting, you had to go to each individual city to convince the local cable company to put TV One on. And so they would send me out and we would do events. So I'm talking about Rochester, New York, Buffalo, New York, Savannah, Georgia, San Antonio, Fort Worth. So we had to put on these events to get African Americans hyped up. And so travel all around Mississippi, Alabama, travel all around this country to get TV One on all of these different cable systems. And so it's not like, I can launch a digital show and we're everywhere. No, you had to go to each individual city. So it was always interesting.
I'm sure.
I remember freezing my butt off in Wichita, Kansas.
Can be colder than it is today.
Oh, no, baby. This is the Midwest.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, no, it was cold. So,
you know I'm not built from that.
So I'm thinking back to all of that, and I actually came across the videos of the first news special we did. It was a national conference of national black mayors. It was at the Lorraine Motel, now Civil Rights Museum. And it was so yes, the last 20 years has been a lot of memories.
He's always at the root of something. First of all, if you know him, first of all, he's gonna be fresh to death. I'm surprised he don't have his feathers, because normally it's a feather coming out of the pocket.
Ask Scott. So I needed to hit him with this one here. So.
How does it feel to be, since you were such a big part of the development of the network, how does it feel to be at the 6th annual Urban One Honors Awards?
It's great, because it's great to see people, because when I hosted it, it was during COVID, and there was nobody in the theater. So it was great, and we'll see what happens this year, because last year, when Tank came out, he was like, yeah, Roland, I see your African outfit. You couldn't get low. And I was like, oh, really? So I had to drop it so he can understand, don't let the African outfit fool you. So we'll see what happens this year.
It was, of course, lots of fun. And you know what? And here's the thing that the reason I sort of walked through that, Julianne, because a lot of people don't understand how these things happen. Folk just figure, oh yeah, launch a network. No, it's a whole lot of drama behind it, and a lot of people also need to understand. And I was going over. I actually found the first episode of Washington Watch. There was a trip. We had Vice President Joe Biden and Congressman Jim Clyburn on that first show. And there were a lot of people you see today on all these other cable news shows who frequent MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. A lot of those people, they were not being called, and they got their opportunity to be panelists on Washington Watch, my first show, and News One Now, the second show.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Roland, on the work you've done, the foundation you've laid for journalists, for commentators, and for so many others. It's really important. The doors were not open to, if you go back, I remember right? We should be regular on To the Contrary. And Bonnie Bay said that her show was an antidote to the pale male talking head syndrome. Because if you go back to, let's say, 2000, you could count on your hands how many people of color you see, how many women you see. Usually at a panel, there'd be one woman. There might be a black person. There might not be. And there was no compunction to do that. And so through the many shows you've had, you basically...
It's 8 o'clock.
You basically opened doors for people and also talked about what the quality of a commentariat could be. And it's really important from that perspective to think about the diversity of thought, not only among black folks. So you got three of us here. We vibe most of the time, but we don't see the world the same way all of the time, and that's a good thing. Black people are not monolithic, and we should not be placed in monolithic boxes. So, Urban One is doing well. There are 6 annual awards. I think that's really great. But I think, award ceremonies are fine. Let's also talk about issues of substance. And, Black Star Network is doing a substance piece, and that's what's important. We just talked this whole period of this show about misinformation, black men and Trump, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We need to have alternative outlets. And as, the Freedmen's Journal said, too long have other people spoken for us. We have to speak for ourselves. So, again, congratulations, and right on.
One of the things that is important, Omakongo, that we spend lots of time in our community talking about and engaging in entertainment conversations. And I get it. If you think about Ebony Magazine, John H. Johnson would often talk about putting a celebrity on the cover, but there was a lot of meat that was on the inside of the magazine. And I dare say, I think one of the problems that we have today is we have lots of dessert. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of meat. We don't have a lot of entrees. We don't have a lot of substance. And that troubles me because in moments like this, in election years, when we're talking about major issues that are happening, I've used this phrase repeatedly that I fear that we are laughing and entertaining ourselves to death. And then when something happens, people go, oh my God, I didn't know, we didn't know that was going on. Yeah, because when we're so focused on gossip and housewives and other stuff like that, then we're losing the reality of the things that are happening in our very communities. And so if we don't have both, we are going to lose.
Absolutely, and it's not supposed to be about either or. It's supposed to be about both and. And I commend, what you've been doing, working with TV One and TV One's platform, and what's been built on the Black Star Network as well, and what continues to be built. But you're absolutely right. I get so frustrated and just ask myself constantly, like, what are we doing with our platforms? We're getting all of this access, creating different things, YouTube channels and all of these things, and so many of these shows, Roland, particularly ones that are hosted by black men. I can't watch any single one of them that one of them doesn't have an alcoholic beverage next to them, or several alcoholic beverages next to them, or all of the smoking. And, again, like you said, you can talk about the entertainment things as well, but there are some real things. I'm so happy to see, the President Biden, Vice President Harris advertisement on the show here, because they're seeing the importance of the media that we have. And are we going to see these ads on other platforms and networks? I don't think so, because they're not serious. And just like last week when you talked last week about how people missed the importance of the brother who does the skits and the content in that interview with Shannon Sharp, it's like even when people do drop some of these nuggets in those spaces, we don't grasp them because we still want the entertainment. We still want to laugh. We still want the gossip. And if we want to get to that next level, which is what the Black Star Network is about, and, the TV One Best in Black is about as well, we have to continue to demand that. And the last thing I will say, it was also great to see at the awards that it was honoring young, old celebrities and entertainers, because a lot of times the young folks feel like, oh, they got to just focus on like, you know, MTV awards or VMAs and all these other types of things. And when they get to a certain level, start to avoid Black audiences as well. And so it was great to see that space as well. So congrats to both Black Star Network and TV One for the incredible work that's being done.
That was a video that was played during one of the commercial breaks that I asked them to send to me. So I want to be able to play that for you. So check this out. TV One's new one now. What we represented was a place for Black America to come, listen, and learn about what was happening in this country. So when you talk about the importance of media, having a Black network with dramas, comedies, entertainment gives you a whole perspective of Black America. Happy 20th anniversary, TV One. I am eternally grateful. Renita, that right there, again, I just believe, and I keep saying this to our people, we have to show a 360-degree view of Black America. And even when, look, I'll say this, I was watching the other day, I recorded it, you know, BET has this news magazine show that comes on once a month, you know, and most pieces are entertainment. And I'm like, guys, we got enough of that. We got enough of that. There is a dearth of news and information that feeds us and that sustains us, and it all can't be sports and entertainment.
Absolutely. And congratulations, Roland, for being honored for the work that you have done, the work that you deserve it. The work that you've done is so important, and it continues to be important. And one of the things that stands out to me about why it continues to be important is that, and I'm going to piggyback off of something that Julianne said earlier, you know, decades ago, growing up, I did not see, it was a rarity to see any Black person presenting news or being a commentator for mainstream media. And that's a situation that has changed. Now the visibility is higher. So now you can turn on an MSNBC or CNN and see Black faces talking about serious issues and presenting news. But what has not changed is there's more visibility of Black faces, but there's not a hyper focus on issues that matter to Black people specifically. And so without this show,
there you go.
Without this show presenting Black news on a daily basis to Black folks, we would not be able to hear our issues articulated. We would not hear different perspectives. So while the visibility has increased, which is great, that is not the same thing as reflecting our issues and increasing substance around the things that we need to know that are not related to entertainment. And so you are filling a void that is very, very important for us, because we are not all a monolith. And by evidence of how well this show has done, and News One as well, you know, there is obviously a Black audience that wants to know about politics and know about things that are not related to entertainment. And I just think for so long, Black people have been given what has been mostly just entertainment based, with the underlying sort of thinking that that is all that matters to us, and it's just not true.
Well, look, I'll tell you this here. When we launched this show, I had reached out to, YouTube was actually funding a lot of different things. And I had talked to people there, and we were told, Black news won't work. And I said, okay, watch us. And we've shown them that. And sure, there are other platforms that get far more views that focus on entertainment and sports. And that's fine. I got no problem with that. But I've made perfectly clear, in this space, we know exactly what we're focusing on. And just like when I was at News One Now, I had a total ban on anything Kardashian. Mm-hmm. You couldn't even bring them up. At News One Now, because I was the host and managing editor, I didn't allow reality show people to come on. Matter of fact, that was one of them housewives. She came to D.C. I actually wasn't there that day. She came to D.C., and it was an initiative she was working on. I said, y'all can discuss the initiative, not her show. And so somebody was like, man, why are you so hard against these shows? I said, because I see how black women are represented on those shows. Mm-hmm. And I said, I am not going to feed that beast. And I said, you won't have to like it, but that's why you're not managing editor. And I am. Right. And so this is why ownership also matters. And so we have got to understand in our community that there are things that are happening in cities across the country. And I get text messages and emails from people pleading with us to cover stories. And what's so sad is we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources of the New York Times, ABC, CNN, MSNBC. We can't send reporters and producers all around the country, which is why we're fighting for those advertising dollars, which is why we're calling out Big Pharma, spending billions of dollars elsewhere, virtually no money on black media. And that means Pfizer. That means AstraZeneca. That means all these pharmaceuticals, Merck, all of them. Hell, Merck had a black CEO and they wasn't spending money. So we have to understand that we do not, as a community, want to get to a point where all we have to show for ourselves is sports and entertainment. That is not how we survived through Jim Crow. We survived Jim Crow because of the North Star Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells Barnett and her reporting, and Robert Abbott and the Chicago Defender, and the Pittsburgh Courier, and Atlanta Daily World, and on and Ebony and Jet and Black Enterprise and Essence and BET when it was black owned and TV One. We have to understand that's how we got to this point. What we cannot do is lose sight of the news and information that informs us, that empowers us, that enlightens us, and educates us. So to our panel, thanks a bunch. I appreciate y'all being on today's show. Rita, thanks a lot. Omakongo, thanks a lot. Julianne, thanks a lot. Folks, that is it. Please support us in what we do. Y'all hear me say this, and I love the people who go, man, I don't know why you be sitting here begging for money. Well, fool, NPR does it every day. PBS does it every day. So what are you talking about? The reality is we do not charge anybody out here for this content. I purposely said we're not going to charge a subscription fee. And we could have. We could have easily said, all right, to access our content, I'm going to charge, $5.99 a month, and I'm going to get, 20,000 people to pay $6 a month. And guess what? That's going to sit here and raise $1.8 million, and that's cool. Nope, I didn't want to do that. I wanted our information to be widely accessible to everybody. Posting it on social, streaming on YouTube, streaming on Facebook, streaming on Twitch, streaming on Instagram, streaming on the Black Star Network app, streaming on our 4 Fast channels. Because we need the information, especially this year. So when I ask y'all to give, you're not sitting here, oh, I'm giving to Roland. No. You're paying this live view unit right here that I'm at the house. This unit here is $20,000. We got 2 of them. We got staff. We got, we're down a booker. We're down a producer. Those 2 positions are going to cost $105,000. Because we don't generate enough revenue, I actually can't provide benefits. So everybody's 1099. And so people have to understand the reality of what we're trying to build. So your dollars are critical. So if you are watching, and if you've never given, please do so today. Commit today. And so we ask $50. If you can give more, great. You can't give 50, whatever you can give, that's great. But trust me, you are making it possible for this show and for Roger's Daily Show and the 5 one-hour shows that we have. We're doing more original content than any other black-owned media outlet in America. Any black-owned media outlet in America. Podcast network or linear cable or radio. That's what we're doing. Senior check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Yes, allergies are kicking my butt. That's why I'm at the home studio trying to get better. I've taken a COVID test. It ain't COVID. It's allergies. I've been in every dadgum climate over the past 30 days, and they are wearing my behind out. But I'm still here, and I appreciate y'all watching as well. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla!
Black Start Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?